So we are going to go through 54 questions of integrated science in all aspects. By the time you are done with these questions, you are ready to get your A in your integrated science in the WAEC senior exams. So the first question here, we are told that the diagrams below are different laboratory setups used in the separation of mixtures. Take the diagrams carefully and answer the questions that follow. So with the I, we are asked to name I to V. So I here is the beaker, which for setup A. Then II is an evaporating dish. III is a Bunsen burner. Then, okay, let's go to IV. IV is panel. Then V here is a tripod stand. Then II says, name the separation method represented by each diagram. So for diagram 1, the separation method is filtration. So for the second one here, the separation method is evaporation. Then the C is sublimation. So III says, which of the setups is used to obtain clear water from muddy water? So the one that is used to get clear water from muddy water is setup E, which is for filtration. And with this second question, we have a diagram here. And what we are supposed to do, we are supposed to answer the questions. So I says, provide a suitable title for the diagram above. So this diagram here is the cross section of the mammalian human heart. So the next one says we are to name the parts I to VII. So what is I? This is I, and this is the spot for I. I is the right auricle. Then II is also the right ventricle. Now you might be asking yourself, why is it your right? Now anytime the diagram of the heart is drawn, it is drawn in such a way that it faces you. So just imagine the diagram you have, you pick it and you put it on your chest. You realize that this part, which I'm calling the right side, is actually your right, and this will be your left. But when you look at it as you are seeing it on your screen or on paper, it's the opposite, but that's the right thing. You can also check your textbook to confirm what I'm saying. Okay, so we labeled I to be right auricle, II to be right ventricle, which is this lower part, then III is the left auricle, IV is the left ventricle, then vein here is the cardiac muscle, then the vein I. This vein I shows you the separation between the left and then the right. It's called the septum. Then the vein II is here. Vein II is the aorta. Then vein III is the pulmonary artery. Then the third question is, state the function of the following parts: I, vein II, and then vein III. So I, which is the right auricle, the function is it receives deoxygenated blood and sends it to the right ventricle. So this I, receiving deoxygenated blood, that is blood that contains carbon dioxide. Then III, which is the left auricle, it receives blood from the lungs to the left ventricle. Then vein II here is a blood vessel which sends blood to all parts of the body. It's a passageway through which blood passes to get to all parts of the body. Then vein II carries deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lungs, from right ventricle to the lungs to be oxygenated. Then Ivan says, state the reason why vein is thicker than the walls of the other chambers of the heart. Now vein is thicker because, now compare this side to this side. You realize that the heart is a, is a muscular mass. The function is to pump blood, but this left ventricle, this part below the left ventricle is more muscular because it is pumping blood to all parts of the body, including the brain and then to the limbs. So it has to be more muscular so that it will be able to pump the blood with pressure so as to get to all parts of the body. So that's the reason. So we move on to the next question. Question 3 here. Okay. Congratulations for watching the video to this far. Check the link description for my WhatsApp link. Message me for your free copies. So it says that the diagram shows the setup of how a mixture was separated in the laboratory. Use it to answer the questions that follow. So we are asked to name the parts I to then I. So I is a thermometer. I is an outlet, water outlet. Then I is a condenser. IV is an inlet. Vein is a Bunsen burner. Vein I is called distillate because the process is distillation. So the distillate is what you have here. Then vein I is known as the round bottom flask. Then I says explain the function of the part labeled I. So I, which is the condenser, reduces the kinetic energy of the liquid that is evaporating. So when the kinetic energy is reduced, what happens? The state of matter changes. So when you reduce the kinetic energy of gas, it reverts back to liquid. So that's what becomes the distillate, and you see as vein I. The next question says, which of the two liquids in the mixture is separated first and why? So over here you can have water and alcohol. Now with water and alcohol will be separated first. The next question says, see two applications of the above method of separation, or for the above method of separation. So purification of liquids. So let's say you have a liquid and then certain impurities. This method of separation can be used to purify the liquid. And then also alcohol distillation, for example beer and then wine. This process is also used to manufacture such liquids. The diagram below is an illustration of an electrical circuit. Say the circuit and answer the questions that follow. So the first question is, name each of the parts labeled I vein, and then vein I. So I is a cell. I is a switch. I is an ammeter. IV is a resistor. And then vein I is a rheostat. So the next one is, state the function of vein I. Vein I, the function is, it is used to control the flow of current. It's a variable, it's also known as a variable resistor. So used to control the flow of current. Then I. It says, state the SI unit of the quantity measured by I. I is an ammeter. An ammeter is used to measure current. So the unit for current is ampere. Then vein is a voltmeter. The unit for measuring voltage or potential difference is volts. Now IV, it says state the energy transformation that takes place in A. So in A, nothing is actually mentioned. We are told to identify the circuit symbols. So the circuit symbols. So I is bulb, II is an ammeter, III is voltmeter, IV is rheostat. I'm not very sure what VIN is. Looking at the symbol, for it to be a fuse would have looked like this. This would have been a fuse, but I don't really know what this is. So if you know it, you can comment in the comment section what's this. So the next one, we move to this, which is a switch, open switch. This is a cell, this is a battery, this is a resistor, and this is also a resistor. So we have a question here. I need to go to the drawing board to draw what you have, because that's what you are supposed to do. You are supposed to draw two resistors with resistance 0.5 ohms are connected in a circuit containing 1.5 volt battery. So it says draw a circuit diagram to show the arrangement, series and parallel. So this is for the parallel connection for the resistors. This is how it's going to be. So this is how your diagrams are supposed to be. The next one, we are supposed to calculate the total resistance for the parallel connection. So in order to calculate the total resistance for parallel connection, this is the formula you use. 1 over RT equals 1 over R1 plus 1 over R2. And the resistances are 5.0. So it's going to be 1 over RT equals 1 over 5 plus 1 over 5. So we are going to get 2 over 5. So 1 over RT equals 2 over 5. Now when you do your calculation very well, you're going to have your RT to be 2.5. So that's 2.5 ohms. So that's what you were asked to find. That is when this for the parallel. So when it's connected in series, RT equals R1 plus R2. So 5 ohms plus 5 ohms will be giving you 10 ohms. So for the series connection, the answer is 10 ohms. For the parallel, it's 2.5 ohms. Now in question 6, we are asked to read the account of Mike below and then identify 5 major activities and then write down the energy transformation in each of the activities. So Mike wakes up early in the morning for school because the church bell was tolled. He wrapped his palm together to feel warm because it was cold at dawn. He then turned on the electric iron to iron his uniform. He gets to school to meet the science teacher using the public address system to address morning assembly. After school, he picked up a stone and threw it vertically up in the air, but the stone fell back to the ground when he tried catching it. So what are we asked to do? We're supposed to write out 5 major activities and the energy transformation. So the first activity I would point out is when he woke up. Once he wakes up, he's going to move. So the energy transformation there is sound energy to mechanical energy. Now, how did he wake up? He woke up because the church bell was tolled. So the church bell tolled made him wake up. So that's the sound energy to the mechanical energy. Then for the second activity, Mike rubs his palms together to feel warm. So rubbing his palms together, that's mechanical energy coming in. So once he rubbed his palms together, he generated some form of heat. So that's from mechanical energy to thermal energy. So for the third activity, turning on an electric iron. So turn on an electric iron, electrical energy comes in there and is converted to thermal energy. Then the fourth activity here is the teacher using the public address system. So the public address system might be connected to the electricity. So electrical energy to sound energy, or if the public address system uses battery, it might be, or it will be chemical energy to sound energy. Then the last is he threw a stone vertically upwards and then it came back to the ground. So throwing the stone is actually mechanical energy, and then the stone coming back to the ground is gravitational potential energy. So that is it for question 6. For question 7, the diagram below, or the diagram is an illustration of an experiment performed to separate components of muddy water. So we are asked to label from I to I. So I here is a retort stand. I is a filter paper. Then I is a funnel. So state the function of I. The function of the filter paper is to help separate the insoluble solid, which is the sand or soil, from the water. So it has pores in it, which drains the water into the beaker. Then name the substance obtained as filtrate, as a filtrate. So the substance that is obtained as a filtrate is clear water. So we move on to question 8. The diagrams below are illustration of parts of a plant. Read the diagram and answer the questions that follow. So identify C and D.
C represents the male part of a flower, D represents female part of a flower.
C is the androsium and then D is the gynecium. Androsium simply means the male part of a flower, and the gynecium is the female part of a flower. Now, the I is the anther, II is the filament, IV is the stigma, V is the sepals, then III is the receptacle. So state one function of each of the parts. So I is the anther, which contains the pollen grains. Then II is the filament, it holds the anther in place. Then III is more like the anchor for the whole flower, or that is what you hold when you want to pick the flower. So below are circuit diagrams of electronic components used to answer the questions. So X, we are asked to identify X. X is the NPN transistor and Y is the PNP transistor. We are asked to label the components of X. So I is the emitter, II is the base, I is the collector. Then we are asked to name the which of the components has a positively doped base and negatively doped base. So the one with the positively doped base is the PNP transistor, which is this one. And the one which has the negatively doped base is the NPN transistor. Then we move on to the next question. State two uses of the electronic component. So one is used for signal amplification, and then it's also used in switches. So the switch that we use in various electrical devices. So question 10. The diagram is an illustration. The diagram below, which is this, is an illustration of a section through the soil. State the diagram carefully and answer the questions that follow. So I, we ask, what does the diagram represent? Represents the soil profile. So we are asked to label from I to IV. So I is the topsoil, II is the subsoil, III is the parent material or weathered rock, and then IV is the bedrock. III says, what's the effect of heavy rainfall on the part labeled I? Soil erosion, washing away of the topsoil. Then IV, we are asked, which part of the diagram is rich in humus? It's I, which is the topsoil. Which is the habitat of soil organisms? It's the same I, which is the topsoil. Then C, which one undergoes weathering? The one that undergoes weathering is the parent material, which is the III. So question 11, we asked to identify the fish. This fish is tilapia. So name each of the parts labeled I to vein. I don't really know what they mean here, but we asked to label I. So let me do a zoom in for us. So I is the mouth of the fish. Then II is the operculum, which covers the gills. Then IV is the scales. So this vein 3, I don't really know what it meant. But vein is the lateral line, vein I is the eye. I is the pectoral fin. So I've labeled everything for you. You can zoom out now. Now before I continue, kindly look in the comment section to message me privately. I have a special PDF designed for all WAEC students to pass their WAEC integrated science exams. Commerce as well. And even if you're a science student doing all the science electives, kindly message me as well. I have a special package for you, which is entirely free. When I say free, you can trust me on that, it's free. So the next one says explain how each of the parts I and then vein I enable the fish to adapt to its habitat. So how is the fish able to adapt to its habitat? With I and then vein I. So I, which is the pectoral fin, helps the fish to balance and then be stable in the water, as well as the tilapia is able to make precise movement and then escape predators. So vein I, which is the eye, it's the eye, so the fish uses it for vision. It's used to spot food, predators, and also spot obstacles. So name the habitat of the fish. The habitat of this fish is fresh water. Example of fresh water is pond or river. Question 12. So we have this beautiful diagram here. We are asked to state a particular type of habitat observed. This is a freshwater habitat, or specifically a pond. Okay. Then II says name 2 abiotic factors that will affect the observed habitat. So abiotic factors, non-living factors. We have water temperature and then light availability. Make a 4-link food chain from the diagram above. So we have green plants there. So green plants, they make an arrow, tadpole. Then we have top minnows. Top minnows are organisms that you find in the pond. Then you also have a tigerfish. So tigerfish will feed on the top minnows. Name one special feature that enable the following organism to live successfully in the observed habitat. So tigerfish. The tigerfish has sharp teeth for catching the prey. Then the next one is the green plant. The green plant has chlorophyll to make its own food. Then hawk. The hawk has sharp eyesight for hunting or spotting its prey. The next question says, what group of organisms are responsible for the production of humus in the observed habitat? Decomposers. When any organism dies and then falls at the base of the pond, decomposers cause the decaying process. They enhance the decaying process for the dead organism to become humus. Organic matter. Question 13. The diagrams below are illustrations of some weather instruments. Study the diagrams below carefully and answer the questions that follow. So I identify each of the instruments above. So this is a ring gauge and this is a wind vane. So give the elements measured. So the ring gauge is used to measure rainfall. Then the wind vane is used to measure the direction of the wind. There's another one called anemometer, which is used to measure the speed of the wind, but this is the wind vane, measuring the direction of the wind. So state 3 ways in which the elements measured are important in agriculture. So let's start with rainfall. Rainfall helps to replenish moisture in a soil. Rainfall also serves as natural irrigation for the farmers. And then it also helps in nutrient distribution throughout the soil or on a farmland. Then when it comes to wind as well, wind helps in pollination of flowers. It's also the source of air for soil aeration. And then the wind can also control pests and then diseases. Some pests can be carried by the wind, as well as certain disease causing agents. So we move on to question 14. Okay, before that, let's look at ivy. These 3 benefits that the nation derives from agriculture. So food security, definitely. Animals and then the rearing of animals and the cultivation of crops. So plants are also agents of carbon sequestration. The leaves of plants helps to capture carbon in the atmosphere, or reduce carbon in the atmosphere. Agriculture also serves as foreign exchange, trade opportunity for the country to make money from other countries. Now this diagram or this question has to do with you measuring. Since this is your screen, you might not be able to get the actual measurement. So you can use your rule to make the measurement. That is from A, measure A, record, measure B, record, measure C, record. It says determine the area of A. So to determine the area of A, multiply small a by B to determine the area of the rectangle A. Then B, you need to multiply the dimension for small b and then dimension for small c. The weight of the cuboid is 100 Newton. If the weight or the yes is 100 Newton. Weight is a type of force. So it says determine the pressure exerted by the cuboid in Newton per centimeter squared. So it means that your dimension should be in centimeters. So which lies on the face of A. So what you are supposed to do is pressure equals force over area. So this unit you have been given here is for the unit for pressure. So your 100 Newton over the area that you got for A. Then you work it out, you get your answer. Then for your B as well, the area, the force which is 100 Newton over the area that you got. Definitely B is going to be the area of B is going to be bigger than A. And so you expect that the pressure exerted by the surface A should be greater than B. So question 15, you're asked to name the parts A to I, and this is the diagram of a flower. So A is the stigma. Remember we met something similar. A is the stigma, then B is the anther, then C is the filament, D is the petal, the brightly colored part of a flower, E is the sepal, then F is the style which holds the stigma in place, G is the ovary, H is the oval, then I is the receptacle. So what is the term given to the following? Transfer the content of B onto A. So B onto A is known as pollination. Then A to F. A, which has the pollen grains, through F. So the union between whatever is in A and then F is termed as fertilization. Then what's the general name for A, F, and G? Is the female part of the flower, which is known as the gynecium. Then the B and C is the androcium. So question 16, study the diagrams carefully and answer the questions that follow. So A, B, and C. So A here is solid, B is liquid, C is gas. So give reasons for your answer. The reason is because you can see that the spaces between the particles are very small. That is for the solid. Then for the liquid, you see that the spaces are moderate. Then for the gas, you can see that they are well spaced. So give one difference between A and C. So the difference is that with C is compressible, A is not compressible. Then give an example of C. Example of gas is oxygen gas. Question 17. The diagram below illustrates the farmland on a slopy area. What process is likely to occur on the farmland when it rains heavily? So it's likely there will be soil erosion. Then II. State 2 farm practices that can lead to the process mentioned in I. So overgrazing and then improper tillage of the land. The farmer is not, ensuring the right materials, or he isn't tilling the land very well. So list 4 farm practices that could be used to control the process mentioned. So farm practices that could be used to control the process mentioned in I, which is soil erosion. The farmer can plant cover crops. Also, he can practice terracing. So the third one is contour plowing. Then also he can practice agroforestry. Then the next question is mention 3 sources. Mention 3 sources that will be depleted from the land when it rains heavily. Have the topsoil, organic matter, and the nutrients as well. These resources will be depleted. So question 18, we have question on light. So question 18, we are asked to name the parts labeled I to IV. Okay, so I, this I, so this I is the incident ray, I is the normal, I is the reflected ray, then IV is the image. Then II says states the relationship between the angle 1 and 2. So this is the angle 1 and 2. This is the angle 1 and this is the angle 2. So the angle 1 is the angle of incidence. The angle 2 is the angle of reflection. So the relationship is that they are equal. State one law governing the phenomena above. So one law, the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection, and also the incident ray, the reflected ray, and the normal at the point of incidence all lie in the same plane. Then the next question says, give two characteristics of IV in the diagram. So characteristics of this image formed. So one, it is virtual. It is also upright, and then it is laterally inverted. Then Vince says, explain why IV is in broken lines. IV is in broken lines because it is not a real image. It is virtual. It's not formed on the screen. Question 19. We are asked to identify A, B, C, and then D. So A is louse, B is tapeworm, C is a caterpillar, and then D is a roundworm. We are asked to group them into ecto and endoparasites. So for the ectoparasites, we have the caterpillar is an ectoparasite, and then the louse is also an ectoparasite. Now, the tapeworm is an endoparasite and the roundworm is also an endoparasite. Question 20. Study the diagrams below and answer the questions that follow. So A is a sickle, B is a hand fork, C is a hand trowel, D is a cross staff. We are asked to label the parts I, and I. So I is the handle, I are the tines, TINES, and I is the blade. State one use of A, B, C, and D. So A is used for harvesting grains or grass. B is used for turning over the soil. C is used for transferring soil. And then D is used for surveying or measuring angles on a farmland. The diagram below illustrates sublimation. Study the diagram and answer the questions that follow. We are asked to name A to F. So A is the tube or the pipe or the funnel. B is the funnel itself. C is China dish. That's what I saw my research. Then D is the wire gauze. E is a tripod stand. What's the main function of the paper wedge? Now, this is the paper wedge. The paper wedge allows steam to escape. Name other two mixtures that can be separated by sublimation. We have camphor and then gravels, then ammonium chloride and then gravels as well. Question 22. In an experiment to demonstrate pressure, a pupil used a tall container filled with water from a running tap and then set beside a sink. The container has holes A, B, and C on the same side, one above the other as shown below. So we have them like this. Draw and label the diagram to show how the water flows through A, B, and then C. So a diagram showing how the water flows since pressure increases with depth. So for C, that's how the pressure is going to be. For B, that's how it's going to be. And then for A, that's how it's going to be. Then it says explain the observation shown in A, B, and C. So the observation, or what you would observe, is that pressure increases with depth. So you see that with the C, for the lowest side, you realize that the pressure is higher, followed by the B, followed by the A. Then what is the aim of the experiment? The aim of the experiment is to demonstrate that pressure increases with depth. So question 25, below are diagrams of living cells. Which cell is a plant cell? Which one is an animal cell? So cell A is an animal cell, cell B is a plant cell. You have to label the parts I to X. So I is the cell membrane, I is the cytoplasm, I is vacuole, IV could be ribosomes. It's not very clear as to what it is. So vein is a cell wall, vein I is a vacuole, vein II is also the cytoplasm, vein III is the nucleus, X. So X is the tonoplast, and then XI is the cell membrane. State one function. State one function of each of the following parts. So I serves as a semi-permeable membrane which allows some materials and not allows certain materials to enter. So it gives a cell its shape. Then II, cytoplasm, this is the home of all the organelles. So question 25, the diagram below shows the structure of an atom. Study the diagram carefully and use to answer the questions. So I is an electron, II is a shell, III is a nucleus, IV is a neutron. How many electrons are in the atom? So counting these circles, you have 3 of them. So the answer is 3. See the atomic number of the atom is also 3. See 2 differences between protons and electrons. So 1, protons are positively charged, electrons are negatively charged. Also, protons are found in the nucleus of an atom, electrons are found on the shell. Then question 26. So the diagram below represents a system of a living organism. Study it and answer the questions below. So A is a nostril, B is a trachea, C is the lungs, D is the diaphragm. The function of the lungs. Site for gaseous exchange. So what does the diagram represent? The diagram represents the respiratory system. Then the Ivan says these 2 gases involved in the process. The gases are oxygen and carbon dioxide. Question 27. The chemical symbols for 2 chlorine isotopes are shown below. State 2 differences between the nuclei, the isotopes above. So the difference is that 1, they have different mass numbers. Another difference is that they would also have different neutron numbers. So with the first one, the mass number for this is 35, the mass number for this is 37. And also the neutron number for this one will be 10. The neutron number for this will be 8. So the neutron number for chlorine with 35 will be 8. And the neutron number for chlorine with 37, mass number of 37 will be 10. State the total number of electrons in and write down the electronic configuration in the chlorine atom. Chlorine atom has electron configuration this way: 2, 8, and 7. Then the chlorine ion electron configuration is 2, 8, 8. Write down 2 isotopes. Write down 2 other examples of isotopes. So 2 other examples of isotopes, we have hydrogen 1, 1, hydrogen 2, 1. Then also we have carbon 12 and then carbon 13.
The next question says, write down a balanced chemical equation between sodium and chlorine.
So to write a balanced equation for sodium and chlorine, so we have sodium here, Na plus chlorine, Cl2. Why? Because chlorine forms a molecule. To make your arrow. Now what is going to be the product? Now to do the product, you need to know the valency for the individual elements involved. So valency for sodium is 1, valency for chlorine is 1. So when you exchange, you're going to have NaCl. Now this is not balanced. How do we balance this? So this is how we balance it. We need to look out how many atoms of sodium do we have? We have 1. How many atoms of chlorine do we have? There's also 2. How many atoms of sodium do we have here? Is 1. How many atoms of chlorine do we have here? Is 1. So this is 2. So what whole number do you multiply by this number to get 2? Multiply by 2. But to multiply by 2, you need to put the 2 in front of the whole compound. Now this 2 is going on to affect the sodium and the chlorine as well. So what we will have now is we have to put 2 in front here, because this one was also multiplied by 2. So if you multiply this by 2, realize I have 2 atoms of sodium here, 2 atoms of sodium here, 2 atoms of chlorine here, 2 atoms of chlorine here. So this is balanced. Below is an experiment to demonstrate one of the products of photosynthesis. So the next one says, state and explain what is observed when the setup is left in sun for about 3 hours. Oxygen bubbles will rise to the surface of the water, indicating that the pond water is actually producing oxygen. Oxygen bubbles will rise to the surface of the water, indicating that the pond weed, yes, the pond weed is producing oxygen. So II says, name the gas produced in the inverted test tube. The gas produced is oxygen. Then the next question says, name 4 factors needed for photosynthesis. So the factors needed for photosynthesis include light, CO2, which is carbon dioxide, water, and chlorophyll. And write down a chemical equation for photosynthesis. I wrote it for you so that you don't spend so much time on this video. Give 2 benefits of photosynthesis to human life. So 1, helps in production of food and also production of oxygen. So this question 29. Question 29, we have the female reproductive system. Alright, so let's start. The first question says, provide a suitable title for the diagram above. So this is the human female reproductive system. And the next one says, name the parts labeled I to vein II. So I is the ovary, II is the fallopian tube, III is the myometrium, has something to do with muzzle, and then the uterus, which is the womb. So IV is the cervix, vein I is the vagina. For the vein and then the I vein looks the same, but if you think they are different, just kindly comment in the comment section the names. The next one says, state the function of I and II. Okay, I, which is the ovary, releases egg periodically, or yes, is a site for release of egg. And then II, it is where fertilization takes place. Next question says the diagram A and then B. 2 holes are made in each of the cylindrical tins. So this cylindrical tin has a hole. This cylindrical tin has a hole. This also has a hole. So they are filled with water. Study it carefully and then answer. So the first question is name the phenomena being investigated by the setups above. So the phenomena being investigated is pressure at different depths. Then the II says what observation we made in A and setup B respectively. So with A, the rate at which the water will be gushing out will be the same because the holes were made at the same depth. So the pressure of the water will be the same. But for B, realize that there are two holes. One is on top, then one is below. So if we say pressure increases with depth, it simply means that the lower the depth, the higher the pressure. So as you go above, the pressure reduces. Just think of this analogy this way, that when you are down, look at the whole atmosphere acting upon you. But when you are up, you are a little above, so the atmosphere is not able to, or the whole, everything in the atmosphere is acting on you. So the lower you go, having more of the whole volume of atmosphere or air pushing you down. So that's a simple analogy you can use for this. But don't write a simple analogy when you're answering it, just for you to understand what I'm saying. So the III says what conclusion can be drawn for A and B. So conclusion is pressure increases with depth. The next one, see the diagram below shows some instruments in the laboratory. So identify each of the instruments I to V. So I here is a tape measure. II is okay. So II is not very clear, but zooming in is actually a clock. Then III is a thermometer. IV is a top and balance, and then V is a measuring cylinder. Alright. So the next question is state one use of the instrument from I to IV. So I is used for measuring length. Then II is used for measuring time. III is used for measuring temperature. And then IV is used for measuring the mass of an object or a substance. Read and record the volume of V. So let's see, even though it's not very clear. I'll zoom in and find out. So looking at it, we have 50, 100, 150. So it looks like 150 centimeter cube. Okay, so that is it. Then move on to question 33. Question 33, students performed tests on food substances A, B, C and made the following observations. So for the A, realize that few drops of iodine solution was added, then the iodine turned blue black. Then for the B, the food, a drop of B was applied on a white sheet of paper. Translucent patch was seen on the paper. The Benedict solution was added to C. The Benedict turns from blue to brick red. So for the A, the food substance that turns blue black when iodine is poured on it is starch. So starch. Then the B, definitely oil. It's very clear. Then C, so it's for reducing sugars. Benedict solution was added. So anytime Benedict solution is added to reducing sugars, it turns brick red. Then III says, in which part of the alimentary canal does digestion of A, B, and C start? So starch could start in the mouth. Yes, starch. Digestion of starch starts in the mouth. B, which is oil, starts in the stomach. Then C, which is reducing sugars, starts in the small intestines. Then IV, in which part of the alimentary canal is C absorbed? So C is also absorbed in the small intestine. Move on to the next question. So the diagram below illustrates, okay, you see that the preamble for the question or the diagram is not actually correct, but we can just try to do something. We can label the part at least. So I, which is this side, is the enamel. Then II, which is this side, is the dentine. Then III is a pulp cavity. Then IV, and this IV. IV is the gum. Then vein. Vein is the bone. Yes. So every tooth is placed in a particular cavity of a bone. Then vein I. Vein I is the cementum. Then vein II is the blood vessel. Then vein III is a nerve. Calculate the current flowing through the circuit. So since we have space here, we can do everything here. So these are resistors. So to calculate the total resistance, 1/3 plus 1/2 plus 1/3. Total is going to give us 7/6. One thing we need to notice is 1/RT equals the total of the fraction, so 7/6. So when we make RT the subject, we are going to have 6/7. So 6/7 in the calculator gives us 0.857. So this is our total resistance for these three resistors. Then the total potential difference is 5 volts. This connection in series, you just need to add them. So there's a formula, V equals IR. Now, anytime you're going to write WAEC, the greatest science, whether BEC, WASSCE, or NOVDEC, you have to be very well abreast with your electrical energy because you're most likely to get a question on it. So we are finding the current. So when we make current the subject, I equals V on R. V over here is 5. Then R is 0.857. And when you do your calculation right, you're going to get 5.834. 5.834 ampere. So the next question has to do with the tooth as well. It says the diagram is an illustration of a longitudinal section of a canine tooth in humans. Study it carefully and answer the questions that follow. So the first one says label I. I is a canine. I is a dentine. Then vein. Okay, let's go to I. I is a cementum. Then IV is the root. Then vein is the pulp cavity. Then what's the function of I and then I? So I is a protective barrier against damage of the tooth, and then also it gives the tooth color. Then the cementum anchors the tooth. Then the next question says which part of the tooth could be affected by tooth decay. So the part that could be affected by tooth decay is I, which is the enamel. 3 ways by which tooth decay can be prevented. So the first way is regular checkup to the dentist. The next one is reduce sugary foods and acidic foods. Reduce too much sugary foods and acidic foods. And also brush the tooth twice daily, in the morning and then before bedtime. So question 40. Study the diagrams carefully and answer the questions that follow. So A here, identify the crop type. A is ginger, B is onion, and then C is yam. So it says name each of the processes. Not a process, just the parts. So the parts, I is the bud. So the bud, those protruding parts are the bud. II is the node. III is the tunic, TUNIC, tunic. Then ivy is the fleshy leaf. So on the onion you see, everything you see, you cut and then add to your food is just a leaf, right? Thick leaf. So the ivy is a fleshy leaf. Then vein, the hard part below it is the stem. Then vein is called the adventitious root. And then vein II. Vein II is the bud or eye of the yam. Then write the types of storage organ. So for A, B, and C. So for A is the rhizome, B is bulb, C is tuber. So the ginger propagated using the pieces of rhizome. So each piece should be at least one bud. So the bud is just the bud is what is propagated into the ground. And then for the onion, use the bulb, small bulbs, or the seeds. Then for the yam, propagated using the seed yam or the eye of the yam. Then the next one has to do with the solar system. You have to identify I to V. So I is the sun, I is the earth. How do I know? Mercury, Venus, Earth. Then I is the asteroid belt. The next one, Ivy, is the ecliptic. So V is Neptune, that's the last planet. Give one importance of I. So the I is provides heat energy and provides light as well. So Ivy give two features of V, which is Neptune. Neptune has the strongest winds in the solar system. It has powerful winds blowing on it, and then also it has the great dark spot. Great dark spot. Yes. Diagram illustrates an experimental setup on the physical property of soil using 3 soil types X, Y, and Z. Study carefully and answer the questions that follow. So we asked to name the parts I to Ivy. So you have to zoom to see very well. So I is a funnel. It isn't very clear what I is, but I looks like a funnel. And then the I is the cotton wool, which is put at the neck of the funnel. Then I is a measuring cylinder. Then ivy is the water that drained through the soil, which passed through the cotton to the measuring cylinder. So we zoom out. So the next one says which of the 3 soil types has the least water holding capacity. So the one that has the least water holding capacity is the one that drained so much. So it's X, which is the sandy soil. Then which one has the highest water retention capacity, which is the Z, because we have less water in the measuring cylinder. So name the soil types. So this sandy soil, so X is sandy soil, Y is loamy soil, because you see moderate amount of water drained. Then Z is clay soil. It says suggest a suitable title for the experiment. So experiment to show the water holding capacity of the 3 types of soil. This is question 44. So the diagram below is an illustration of an experiment that was carried out. In the experiment, 3 pins 1, 2, and 3 are fixed with candle wax onto a metal bar, and one end of the bar was heated by means of boiling water. A, B, and C are thermometers inserted in the holes along the bar to measure the temperatures at various points. So suggest an aim for the experiment. The aim of this experiment is to investigate the transfer of heat along a metal bar and subsequent melting of wax at different points along the bar. So the next question says, what is the temperature of boiling water? The temperature of pure boiling water is 100 degrees Celsius. I. State the observation that will be made about each of the pins 1, 2, and 3. So the observation is that pin 1 will drop first, followed by pin 2 and pin 3 in that order. So Ivan says, state the observation that will be made about the temperatures recorded by the thermometers A, B, and C. The thermometer A will give you the highest temperature, followed by thermometer B, followed by thermometer C. And then state how heat from the sun is transmitted to the earth. It's transmitted by radiation. Then question 44. We have a Thermos flask here. So the diagram below is an illustration of a Thermos flask. Study the diagram carefully and answer the questions that follow. So I is the cork. I is the silver inner and outer glass wall. I is the vacuum. IV also is cork. Then V is a vacuum seal. How does the device minimize heat loss or gain? Through conduction. So heat loss or gain is reduced because of the vacuum. The vacuum between the inner wall and then the outer wall. So the vacuum here in between the inner and outer wall. Then heat loss by convection. How is it prevented? So the vacuum as well also prevents, particles from circulating. Then the next one, how is heat loss or gain reduced? By radiation. By the silver inner surface. It reflects the heat back into the contents in the flask. So we are supposed to state one use of the thermos flask. The thermos flask is used to keep hot or cold liquid for extended period of time. Next question 45 is the digestive system. And we are asked to label the parts I. So I is the tongue, I is the gullet or esophagus, I is the stomach, IV is the liver. And that's all. We are asked to give the function of vein and VI. So vein, which is the gallbladder, stores bile, and VI is the pancreas, produces pancreatic juice. So name the part where digestion of protein starts. Digestion of protein starts in the stomach. So identify the part where absorption of end products takes place. Is the ileum or small intestine. Where absorption of water takes place, the colon or the large intestine. Digestion takes place. Rectum and anus. Question 46. So the diagram below shows the structure of an atom. Study it carefully and answer the questions that follow. So identify I to VI. So I is an electron. II is a K shell. III is a L shell. Then vein. You can see vein is the enclosure of the protons and neutrons. That's the nucleus. Then VI. VI is proton. So it says neutron and what? Neutron and proton. Then the next question is, what's the maximum number of parts labeled I can the N shell take? So how many electrons can N shell take? the N shell can take 18 electrons. How? The formula is 2n squared, where n is the shell number. So the shell number over here with n is, so we have the K shell first. So the K shell 1, so K, L, M, then N. So this 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So the N shell is the fourth. So you substitute it into this N. So 2n squared. So 2 multiplied by 4 squared. So we are going to have 2 times 16. So 2 times 16 is what? 32. So the answer is 32. It's actually 32 electrons. So if the mass number of the above atom is 39, find I, the number of protons. How do we know the number of protons? We know the number of protons by knowing the number of electrons, because this is a neutral atom. If you know the number of electrons, you know the number of protons. So the number of electrons over here, looking at it, we have 2, 8, 8, 1. So 2, 8, 8, 1. So we have 19. So 19 protons. The next one says atomic number. Proton number is the same as atomic number, so that's also 19. Number of neutrons. So 39, which is the mass number minus the proton number, will give you the neutron number. And this is giving us 20. So number of neutrons is 20. And the last one, what's the chemical symbol of the element? It's capital K. That's which for potassium. So that's for potassium. The next question says, explain why atoms are electrically neutral. Atoms are electrically neutral because the number of electrons equals the number of protons. So they cancel out. The next question says, study it carefully and answer the questions that follow. So we have magnetization by the electrical method. So give the names of the parts of the circuit I to III. So I is a solenoid, II is a permanent magnet, and III is a wire or conductor. The next question says, rearrange the steps below to give the correct procedure in which the experiment was carried. So the correct procedure, first you are supposed to connect the labeled I to an alternating current. Then the next one is the II. Place the labeled II inside the solenoid, which is I. Then switch on the AC supply. That is it. So it is I first, followed by II, followed by I. List two other methods which can be used to demagnetize a magnet. So the two methods, one, hammering, and then two, heating of the magnet, and then hammering the magnet continuously to demagnetize it. So 48, your science class embarked on a field trip to Mr. Nemo's vegetable farm, crop farm. Study the images below. Answer the questions. Identify images A and B. So A is a tomato plant, then B is lettuce. Then it says, which image is Mr. Nemo likely to stick? Image A. What will necessitate the action in II above? So you need to stake this, that is to support the root plants, because the stem is very weak. The tomatoes would definitely make the plant lean to a particular side. So to expose the leaves to sunlight, you need to stake so that they will stand upright. State 4 cultural practices Mr. Nemo will undertake in future on the vegetable farm. Mulching, watering, C. Weed removal. Then fertilizer application. 49. The diagram below shows a three-dimensional faces A, B, and C of a rectangular block of wood. The mass of the block is 20 kg. Use the diagram to answer the questions that follow. So this 20 kg. Let's measure A, B, and then C. So we've met something like this before. So use your rule to measure all the sides and then just calculate the weight. Weight equals mass times acceleration due to gravity. So your mass is 20 multiplied by acceleration due to gravity is 10. So 200 Newton. What pressure is exerted by the face B? So this B. So we measure the length of the side, then that side. So you get the area, multiply to get the area. Pressure equals force over area. So your force will be here, area will be down here, and then you cancel out. Study carefully the gardening tools shown below and use them to answer the questions. So A is a hand fork, B is a hand trowel, C is C cutters, D is a long sickle, then E is a pair of shears. Now D is also sometimes called go to hell. So the next one is state one use of A, B, and C. So A is used for stirring the soil. B is used for transplanting or fetching the garden soil. Then C is used for pruning young stems of plants. Then vein II says which of the above tool is not needed in vegetable crop production. So the long sickle is not needed in vegetable crop production, which is also known as go to health. So the next one says in a vegetable crop production, which of these tools needed before harvesting? The illustration below shows an organism. Study it carefully and answer the questions that follow. Identify the organism in the image. So the organism in the image is called the cactus plant, and the organism be mostly located. It's located mostly in the desert. Let's state three adaptive features that will enable the organism adapt to the desert. So the leaves are reduced to minimize water loss. The stem is also very thick to store water. Then it has a waxy coating to reduce evaporation. Then 52. A student wanted to demonstrate the presence of water in soil. Study the experiments below and answer the questions that follow. I. Evaporating dish. II is a wet soil. III is a tripod. III is wire gauze. And IV is a tripod stand. It says rearrange in the correct order in which the experiment was carried. So I've labeled them for you. So this is the first one. First one is take a sample of II from a depth of about 20 centimeters. So you pick the wet sand from the garden or from a farm. Then you're supposed to weigh the contents, weigh the evaporating dish and then the wet soil. Then you're supposed to half fill the evaporating dish with II, which is your wet sand. Then the 4 is heat I and its contents over the Bunsen burner at a temperature of 100 degrees Celsius. Then the C says why was the part labeled I and its content heated at a temperature of 100 degrees Celsius and not 70 degrees Celsius? The simple reason is water has a boiling point of 100 degrees Celsius. So at that temperature, most I would have evaporated. So what was the experiment for? The experiment was used to demonstrate that there's water in the soil. And what observation was made? The observation that will be made is that the soil wouldn't be lumpy again and it wouldn't look wet because most of the water has evaporated. So the illustration below shows internal parts of a tray plug pin. Carefully study the illustration and answer the questions that follow. So I is the earth wire, II is the neutral wire, III is the cable grip, IV is the fuse, then VIN is the live wire. State any two rows of the part labeled IV in the illustration. So the IV is the fuse. The fuse helps to prevent the flow of current during overload, and also it prevents damage of the electrical appliance. Then the next one says list any 3 chemical appliances that have the part labeled IV. Okay, it's actually electrical appliances, not chemical. So we have electric iron, rice cooker, and then a heater. My Fatma will examine the process in the change of state of matter as shown in the diagram below. So we have to identify I is vapor, then I is a tripod stand, I is a beaker, then IV is a Benson burner. Name the process I. Okay, the process I is known as melting. State the main function of I. So I is there to hold the liquid in place, because without the beaker, the pure ice will melt and then to be on the ground. Just wet the floor. Then IV says state the boiling point of ice in step 3. So the boiling point is 100 degrees Celsius. Then the last question is state 2 processes of change of state of matter that occurred in III. So III, evaporation took place, then condensation also took place. Thank you for watching this video. Comment in the comment section what new thing you learned. Keep studying by yourself.